Oh wow, this is the first model that actually cheated on this task, but it did it in a really, really interesting way. I'm kind of impressed. Okay, this is impressive, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. Okay, so Qwen just released Qwen 3.8 Max, which is going to go open weight in about a week. This is their biggest release to date yet. It's multimodal from the ground up. It's a 2.4 trillion parameter model, which is going to be the biggest open weight model when it's actually available on Hugging Face. And it's a 95 billion active parameter model. Again, it's a pretty big deal compared to what we have seen. Okay, so here is the released post. We look at a few things, but seems like people are a lot more excited by the upcoming 3.8 27 billion model than the actual model released today. And that's for good measure because you can run that 27 billion parameter model on consumer hardware. Okay, so in this video, we are going to look at some of the capabilities of this new model and some really interesting applications. But first, let's look at some benchmarks. So on code design, it's overall fourth on the LM arena. Or no, they call it just the arena, which is a big deal because this is the second open weight model that is getting a spot in the top 5. Okay, so overall, it's a very competent model. If you look at the overall benchmarks, I would say it's somewhere between Opus 4.8 and Fable. Specifically for coding-related tasks or agentic use cases, it is on par with Opus 4.8. For some reason, they did not include Opus 5 scores, which is very interesting. Now, let's talk about some capabilities, and then later on, I'll show you some of my own tests, which it actually does pretty well. So they're calling this the most capable model in the Qwen family to date. And this is actually the first time that they are releasing or going to be open sourcing the weights of a Qwen Max class model. They're kind of forced because we had Kimi K3, which actually blew everything out of the water so far. But the main claim to fame is going to be that it's a tech model that can do long horizon tasks. And that is kind of the holy grail at the moment. And you actually see examples of this throughout this blog post. One of the interesting examples was that they asked Qwen 3.8 Max to create its own harness. And it did self-evolution of that harness over 16 days. So this can do really long running tasks. Now, this is one of the areas that we have seen that a lot of companies are actively researching on. They are exploring the possibilities of these models to create their own harnesses, which is a very interesting area because that basically leads you to RSI or recursive self-improvement in the long term, especially if the model can modify its own harness based on the task at hand. And they actually released that harness. So it's called My CLI. I am actually going to put this to the test to see how good this is, but seems like it supports OpenAI compatible API endpoints. So you could potentially use any model with this, not only the Qwen model. Now, from my experience, usually the simplest harnesses are the best harnesses because you want the model to have the flexibility rather than the harness actually restricting its capabilities. Pi is a perfect example of a really simple harness that can evolve with the models. So they also ran an experiment where the model autonomously designed a chip and was able to beat human participants on the multimodal dialogue intent recognition challenge. Now, I asked it to create a website about itself, and I think it does really, really great. So we can actually see this is Qwen 3.8. 2.4 trillion parameter model. It's the first multimodal Qwen model that is above 1 trillion parameter, right? So really nice, and actually really like the style of the website that it has created. It doesn't really look like the general AI slob. It actually does have some taste to it. Now, this has a lot more information compared to what exactly was shared. It actually says second only to Fable 5, right? I kind of like the UI that it's able to create, which is pretty nice to see. This is probably better than some of the other open models or even proprietary models that I have seen. Really nice job by the Qwen team with this. Okay, so in the rest of the video, I want to get some of my own tests because it is a very interesting model. So in this case, we're basically providing an API which provides the location information of International Space Station, and we want it to create a web app that is going to track the location and update it every 5 seconds. Now, my first observation is regarding the chain of thought, which is extremely well structured. Now, it also does interleaved tool calls. So, for example, within its chain of thought, it's able to use the search tool, look at the result, and then update its chain of thought or next steps based on those web results. And even it's able to run Python code using the Python interpreter, and then it can update its prior based on the results that it's seeing. Keep in mind, it's a completely multimodal model. I think for tasks like these, the results are going to be much better if we use it under a harness. Because at the moment, I am just testing it on the web interface, although it does really good agentic codes, but I think we're going to see much better performance if it actually has access to coding harness. Okay, so at the end, it created this artifact for us, which basically a globe. Now, interestingly enough, like you can see the North America and South America side, but I don't know what exactly happened for the rest of the world. That's not really rendered properly. Okay, so here's kind of the approximate location, which actually aligns with the actual location if we assume this is a globe. So in reality, right now, I can actually see that ISS is just off of the coast of Russia. So it aligns with the location that it was showing. Okay, the second prompt is a fun one where I wanted to create a Pokemon Encyclopedia. Actually, it does a pretty good job at this. I really like the animations that it included. And if you click on it, you can see further details, the animations, right? Which is pretty awesome. Does seem to be really good at front-end design, but I'm kind of impressed with what it can do in terms of front-end design. Really nice so far. Okay, so this next one is what kind of caught me by surprise. So I'm asking it to create an animation of a crowd of people walking from Hello World, I'm Qwen, right? So the model has to track spatial positions of multiple different people who are supposed to be walking while the camera angle is changing. I've seen that most of the last generation of frontier models had a lot of trouble with this. Now, it cheated, but in a very interesting way. And let me show you what I mean by that. So when you load this, right, you see that there are people walking around, and then it basically overlaid this text in the background, which essentially says, "Hello world, I'm Qwen," right? Now, this is not what I asked it to do, right? But I think the model thought that, okay, this is probably the easiest way. I can just write that text and arrange these individuals in that specific order, right? Which is really interesting. I was not expecting this at all. And I haven't seen this kind of behavior from any of my previous tests with these frontier models. So this was kind of a little bit shocking to see. Okay, so this next one is basically implementing a tourist exploration map for Los Angeles. So you can just click on different locations. It's going to take you. It's able to use an open source 3D map that I specifically asked it to do. And it seems like it does a pretty good job at it, right? Although from the main map, it doesn't really show you the locations, but you could actually work with it, I think, pretty easily. There's also a night mode where the buildings are a little darker for my taste, but it seems to be working pretty fine. Again, this is under the normal harness that they're using for their web interface, nothing special in terms of agentic coding harness. Okay, so now in terms of pricing of this model on their own first-party API, it's actually a lot cheaper compared to the Kimi K3 model, which is really interesting. So Kimi K3 input is, I think, $3 per million input token. This is $2, and Kimi is $15 put, but this is only $6, and it has the same 1 million context window. So it is actually a really good option as an alternative to Kimi K3. Okay, now we need to talk about this new trend of bigger and bigger open models, which is great. However, these are mostly geared towards enterprises and businesses, not to general public. For general public, it does not really matter whether you are accessing a proprietary API or you're accessing an open weight model under somebody else's control in their API. I think the need to really think about the terms of services of the inference provider. However, I do see a lot of excitement about the Qwen 3.8 27 billion model. This is supposed to be a mid-range, or actually a small open weight model that you can run on your local hardware. Now, Qwen has been doing really well at releasing these 27 billion models, and I still find the 3.6 27B to be one of my favorite model in this category. And I think they're going to do a really good job with that model as well. Now, one more thing, the model weights are not out yet, and we don't even know about the licensing. So the licensing may or may not be commercial friendly. You probably will need to highlight that this is a Qwen model, very similar to what Kimi asks people to do if they have users beyond certain number or their annual recurring revenue is greater than some amount. But given how expensive it is to train these models, I think that's an appropriate thing to do at this point. Anyways, check it out. I think this is a really interesting release. I'll probably create a follow-up video running this in an coding agent, and we'll share that. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.